What does economics have to say about the environment? Do economists have anything to say about climate change or species preservation? This is an area economists are quite interested in and have studied for many years to help both society at large and policymakers. I'm Professor Christina Brown, and this is Economics for Everyone. The choices people make can have a major impact on the world around us. Not just humans, but animals, plants, and even the health of our planet. Environmental economics is a vibrant area within economics. Economists study questions like what can be done to mitigate climate change, and how much should we spend preserving a species. The field of economics has a set of tools to help us address these types of questions. In particular, one tool is the concept of an externality. Under many circumstances, markets work great. Markets have helped society in countless ways. However, there are cases when a free market does not result in the largest social surplus. One of the ways in which markets fail is in the presence of externalities. A negative externality occurs when an economic activity has a spillover cost on third parties that does not affect those directly engaged in the activity. Positive externalities occur when an economic activity has a spillover benefit on third parties that is not enjoyed by those engaging in the activity. Imagine an ecosystem near a river. It's home to many kinds of animals. And let's say upstream, a power plant is built that provides electricity to a nearby town. In addition to the power it supplies, it also produces an unintended effect. It pollutes the water in the river. That increased pollution may have unintended effects on the wildlife. It may cause a fish species to go extinct, which could have an impact on the entire ecosystem and all of the people that depend on that ecosystem. The pollution in this example is a negative externality on the environment. Another common negative externality comes from the byproducts of producing or consuming goods, carbon emissions. Carbon emission is costly to society because it causes climate change. And society is now having to deal with stronger storms, rising sea levels, and disruption of habitats. Ultimately, these negative externalities cause the equilibrium quantity of carbon-producing goods in the market to be above the social equilibrium, i.e., the equilibrium that takes into account those costs that are imposed on bystanders. So what does this mean? Well, this means that there are bystanders that are paying a cost that they didn't choose to pay. In order to achieve the socially optimal quantity of a good, we need to take into account that negative externality. And as a result, the socially optimal quantity will be lower than the one in the free market. These negative externalities often happen because producers or consumers are not held accountable for the social cost of their actions, such as the carbon emissions from things they produce or consume. So let's take a look at the supply curve for this market. Here we see the supply curve of a firm that is not accounting for the marginal social cost. And next to it, we see the marginal social cost curve, which is the supply curve that takes into account the marginal social cost imposed on society. As you can see, the quantity that maximizes total social surplus is lower than the quantity produced if the producer does not take into account the negative social costs to bystanders. So how do we then achieve the optimal quantity? One way this can happen is through government regulation, through new taxes levied on producers. A corrective tax, also known as a Pigovian tax, is a tax designed to induce producers of a negative externality to internalize the costs, so they then produce at the socially optimal level. How much should this tax be? Well, if the government is trying to lower production to the socially optimal level, this tax should be exactly equal to the social cost. So for our example, the tax amount should be set to the social cost of the carbon emissions. But this amount is tricky to calculate. to know exactly what the costs and benefits are to bystanders. Determining these amounts is an important area in economics, and it's key for policymakers to be able to make informed decisions. Let's explore a real-world example of how this is done. The Clean Air Act of 1970 expanded the federal government's ability to reduce and control air pollution. While there are many ways to track the costs and benefits of this law, economists Michael Greenstone and Kenneth Che evaluated the value of reducing air pollution on home prices. Their analysis aimed to apply a dollar amount to the benefits of cleaning up air pollutants. Che and Greenstone studied how housing prices changed in counties where, due to the law, air quality improved significantly. They found, in aggregate, housing values increased by approximately $45 billion because of the Clean Air Act. Policymakers can then use estimates of the costs of air pollution to determine how big taxes should be to encourage producers to decrease production to the socially optimal level. While there are many ways economists consider environmental questions, looking at externalities, both positive and negative, is a powerful tool. Externalities impact everyone, because economics is for everyone.